G'day fellas, welcome to a build order breakdown. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Byzantines, the brand new Byzantines. They have been buffed by the developers and they have been absolutely broken. I'm telling you right now, this civilization is going to go crazy with the strategy I'm about to show you. Let's get into it. This strategy is a very aggressive opening that is going to counter pretty much every civilization on the ladder. So I'm going to show you how to do it, I'm going to show you what it's good for, and then I'm going to show you how you can transition out of it into a really strong mid game. We're up against an AI here because I am technically on the new patch and there's nobody else here with me. The devs have been nice enough to give me a little bit of early access. So let's get into it. I'm going to show you why this change by the developers, this single change, has made the Byzantines broken. Let's get into it. So we're going to start by moving all of our villagers towards the berries. We're going to move our scout out, and of course we're going to queue villagers in the town center. We're going to right-click the berries. We're going to build a mill with 2 villagers, a cistern with 1, and a house with 1 villager. I know that's a lot, but practice it a couple times and you'll get it right. We're also going to make sure that our first villager comes out of the TC and goes onto a sheep. When we consider placing our cistern, we just want to make sure that we cover our berries, we want to cover our town center, and then we want to cover any other resources that are nearby. Fortunately for us here, I have got my gold and my stone, so this is pretty good. Now, one of the things to note is that when you start off opening berries, that means that you don't need these sheep as much as civilizations that do. So that means that you can be more aggressive with your scout, and he doesn't need to come home until, 3 minutes, 3 minutes 30, 4 minutes even. So take advantage of that, and I'm going to do a big loop that we'll watch. But now with that next villager that comes out, so the first one went onto sheep, second one is going to be coming out over onto the gold vein, and then the third one is going to be doing that as well. You always want to make sure that when you do this, what you want to be doing is making sure this villager is going to help build this, because you want them to start gathering gold at the same time, because we only want to gather 100 gold. That's it. You don't want one to start before the other. It's a small little detail, but it just helps out in the long run. Anyway, so now what we're going to be doing is moving a single sheep out onto the mill. This is important, but not right now. It's just we're kind of future-proofing, not future-proofing, but this is something related to the future for the build order. In the meantime, what we're going to be doing is rallying all of our villagers over onto the sheep carcass. Now, you might be wondering, Drongo, you've talked this build up, you've said it's overpowered, you've said it's broken. What's so broken about it? Well, the reason why it's so broken is that you've got a huge amount of cavalry that you can have out really quickly. And normally when you've got lots of units coming out quickly, it's just one type of unit, right? Because it's a bit expensive to get all of those units out early on in the game. The difference here for the Byzantines is you get 5 longbows. So it's not 1 or 2 longbows, it's 5, which is enough to 2-shot a spearman, which is kind of crazy. It's enough to 2-shot villagers. It is a perfect amount of longbows to have. And you can see we're doing this beautiful loop around the map and just finding all of these sheep. Keep in mind, this is a really aggressive route to be doing. So it feels very good to come home. Normally you're coming home with about 10 to 12 sheep, which feels very, very good. So now we're getting towards that age up. You can see that we've rallied over 5 villagers to our food. I'm going to pause it here just because there's a fair bit going on. So we're going to drop off our last gold. And when we drop off our last gold, so we're going to go from 180 to 200, we're going to move these 2 villagers over onto wood. And then we're going to age up with these 5 villagers. These guys are going to build the hippodrome and they're going to build it within the radius of our cistern. Very important. You want to try and drop it down as quickly as you can, because the sooner you drop it down, then the sooner you're going to be aging up to feudal age. And that means the sooner you're going to be able to make units. Now, it's a very, very tight build order. One of the things that we're doing is we're gathering olive oil in the early game here, and the idea is that with this olive oil, we're going to be using it to buy those mercenaries. And of course, we're talking about the longbows. They're going to be costing 500 olive oil. And this is where you start to see why this change is so absolutely broken for the Byzantines, because on paper, it doesn't seem that bad. Now, I will just say we're going to start rallying villagers out over to wood now. We're going to go up to 7 on wood, and then we'll rally back to food. But have a look at this. We've got a nice little following. You can call me the New Zealander, that is for sure. So when we think about that change, so let's just break it down a little bit. First, mercenary contract choice is now free and instant, saving 100 olive oil and 20 seconds of research time. So not only do you get that free 20 seconds that you're attacking faster, right? So that's 20 seconds that you're now attacking faster, but on top of that, that's 100 olive oil less that you need to gather. And that is very critical. You're about to see exactly why that is, because we need 500 olive oil. We don't need 600 olive oil anymore. We only need 500. And the reason why is because these 3 berry bushes are almost enough to give us that 500 olive oil. We're very, very close to it. So our age up is about to come through. I'm going to pause it as soon as we age up, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that is going to happen. But the most important thing is that you're going to tell your villagers to get ready to put down that mercenary house, and you want to be putting this down within the radius of the cistern. You could technically queue a horseman at this point, but don't do it. We just want to be rushing up that mercenary house because we want to get those longbows in queue as quickly as we possibly can. And now we're still rallying out over onto wood, and now we can queue up that horseman. But the trick is we want to queue the horseman after the villager reaches 2 seconds. And the reason why is because otherwise the horseman's going to pop before the villager. And we're about to go idle right here. So you can see that we're going to be 20 out of 20 on that. So we immediately queue the contract, immediately queue the longbow. This is pretty early, right? Like we have got our longbows in queue. I think they're in queue at about 4 minutes 11, which is pretty damn good. Our first system's gone down. Now we've got the resources to put the second one down. So we're going to do that as well. Make sure that we extend out the network, and we're going to rush down a house as quickly as we can because remember, we're about to be population blocked by this town center. So now we're maximum population blocked, and we're waiting on that last house to come up. There it is. There we go. So our horseman is out 4 minutes 30. And now we're all good. Now remember that when we're doing this, we always want to make sure we keep our town center pumping villagers. That's the most important thing. And then when it comes to getting horsemen out, I think the most important thing is just make sure that your villagers are always pumping. And as long as they're pumping, then you're fine to continue making horsemen. We're going to finish up that aqueduct, and now we're going to move out across the map. And this is where it starts to get really scary, because this is very early on in the game. If you're playing up against the English, there's a good chance that they might have longbows streaming towards you. Congratulations, you're going to absolutely clean that up with your horsemen. Any spears that come out, you're going to be able to take them out with your 5 longbows, because they are now on the field. Have a look at this. This is so damn early. Now, from this point, this is where it gets a little bit funky. A little thing that I mentioned before was that you put a sheep out here. Now, why would you go ahead and put a sheep out over here? The reason is because berries gather slower than sheep. The reason why we were on berries is because we wanted that olive oil. Now that we've bought or purchased our mercenaries, the 500 olive oil is used up. We don't need this olive oil at this stage. We will come back to it later, but right now the most important thing is that we have the higher sheep gather rate. So what we're going to do is we're going to be gathering up that sheep. It's one of those things that you got to remember to do. There's so many things you got to remember to do. Remember this if you need a PhD for it, but what you want to be doing is rally those villagers from the berries over to the sheep, and then what I like to do is then send them to gold once they're finished. And so you can see we're going to finish now, and they're all going to head out over to gold. And then we're going to look at our transition period. And that's right, we're already transitioning 5 minutes into this game, but we've got so many units out. And I think that's the part of the reason why this is so damn strong, is it allows you to just have units on the field really, really early. There's a couple of civilizations that I don't see this working against. So I don't see this strategy working against the Mongols. I think they're going to shut down your berries too early. I don't see this working against the French, because they're going to be able to make knights from their landmark, and they're just going to be able to counter both of your units, because the knight does very well against both of these units. Other than that, you might have a little bit of difficulty with, say, the Malians here, because they have javelin throwers on the defensive, but it is going to force them to make units, and it is going to put them on the back foot. So even though they might have an answer to what you're throwing at them, they might not have an answer to the next question you're going to be asking them. Anyway, so now that we've sort of gotten ourselves on our toes, one of the things to remember is we always want to be adding in houses. It feels like whenever you're playing the Byzantines that your population just jumps up a lot because of your mercenaries. So that's always something to keep in mind. But we've also put 2 villages now onto stone. We've taken these guys from wood over to stone. These guys are going to be responsible for adding in more cisterns over the next couple of minutes, because remember, we are going to be trending towards Castle Age. Castle Age is going to allow us to get access to the big golden Horn Tower, I think it's called. Golden Horn Tower, which is going to be pumping out longbows non-stop for us. So that's going to be really, really strong. And then on top of that, it's going to be increasing the gather rate. Now, when you look at the way that an economy functions, there's realistically 3 aspects to it. The first one, it's going to be how fast a villager gathers a resource. The second one is how much of that resource it can hold at one time. So as an example, you can hold 10 of the resource until you've got wheelbarrow, at which point you've got 15. And then the third component of it is movement speed. Now, one of the big things that is going to disadvantage anybody who's on berries is that what typically happens is you put your mill down next to the berries, you take the close ones, but then you've got berries that are a little bit further away. So what's going to happen there is that your villagers now spend more time running. So what we do is we opt to get wheelbarrow. This is going to mean that our villagers spend less time running, and when they are running, they're going to be running faster, and they're going to be carrying more when they do run. Now that we're over on this side of the map, I don't really need to narrate this. You guys know what's going to be happening, but generally the idea is going to be we want to try and focus down villagers as much as we possibly can. If there's enemy spearmen, we want to try and hit them with our longbows, and we want to make sure that those spearmen never get in contact with our horsemen. When it comes to horsemen, I think the best number of horsemen to go up to is probably around the 10 mark. You can see here I'm not really paying attention. I've gone for 6 horsemen here, and one of the things that I did notice is it felt like I probably could have made a few more horsemen. So that's one of those things where it's like, you know, it will depend on the game that you're playing, but the idea here is not to kill the opponent. The idea here is to kill a couple of villages if you can. It's to force a response from your opponent, and it's to ruin their day. It's to ruin their plan. You know, if I'm playing Chinese, if I'm playing 2TC, Song Dynasty, that's my plan, coming up against the Byzantines, and all of a sudden I've got units in my base at 5 minutes. I've got 2 different types of units that I've got to deal with. I want to make Zhu Canoe. Well, I can't make Zhu Canoe against longbows or horsemen, so I'm going to have to make something else. I'll make horsemen. And guess what? Well, I can make horsemen over here faster than the Chinese. Well, actually, probably not faster than the Chinese. But most civilizations, I can make it faster because I've got that extra amount of military production. You can see right here, we've got an extra 60% of military production there. So I'm going to be able to outmass them. But now that age up is about to come through, we've also picked up our horticulture upgrade because that's going to be very important for gathering up berries. And now we're going to click our age up at 8 minutes and 48 with 12 villages, which is a pretty monstrous amount. Now we move into that transition period. So with this army, I think the best thing that you can do is look to try and keep your longbows alive if possible, and then try and throw your horsemen away. You don't have to throw your horsemen away, but it just basically what we're looking to do is go into a full infantry composition, and I think that's what's going to really empower the Byzantines in that castle age, especially in the early stages. So you've got Varangian guards, which are very strong just because of that melee armor. So typically people are going to be building up a few spears against your horsemen, so the Varangian Guard will do very well. Imagine if you're playing up against the English as an example, they're probably going to be going longbows and spears, and the problem that they've got is they don't know when to stop. They don't know when should I stop making units, and it's not until they actually scout, oh, there's an age up right there, that they go, crap, I've made too many units, and they're going to try and march their infantry over onto the map, but we've aged up before 9 minutes 40, and we've now got Varangian Guard in queue. We've got 1-2 Varangian Guard in queue. We've also got an archery range, which is going to be helping us out with crossbows if we need it. And we're also going to be taking advantage of the reduced price of the veteran contract. So we see here, not only is the price reduced from 250 gold, 100 food to 125.50 food, but also that research time is now reduced as well. So it only takes 30 seconds, which means we've got our veterancy for the longbows already coming through, which just feels extra nice. On top of that, we want to make sure that we are adding in our cisterns constantly. And that's essentially how you transition. Now the question is, where do you go from here? In my opinion, there is one supreme composition for the Byzantines, and that is everything. That is quite literally everything. Lametanai, Varangian Guard, crossbows, longbows, all together mixed in. Maybe add in a little bit of siege. You'll see that we're also throwing down the monastery. We want to make sure that we put our initial monastery as close as we can to that relic. You don't want to get it all the way over there, but you know, in that vicinity. You don't want to be throwing your monastery over here and then walking over to this relic and then bringing it all the way back. You want to kind of keep it in the same neighborhood. And then, so now at this point, we're still just adding in units. We've got our very first monk that is going to be coming out shortly, and we're having a good time. So this is where it becomes important that we are macroing appropriately. We've got the correct amount of villagers on gold, the correct amount of villagers on food, and you're going to notice that you start to run out of food. We can see already I've got a couple of idols under the town center. So where do we go from here? And the question... well, the answer is going to be berries. And this is where that berry synergy once again comes in, because once we start taking those berries again, we're going to start building up the olive oil again, and then we're going to be able to add in more and more longbows. At this stage of the game, we've still only got 5 longbows. These are the same longbows that we had 6 minutes ago. We've only just got our new set of longbows in right now. But we're feeling good about ourselves, because remember, when it comes to the Byzantines, we're just going to absolutely pop off once we start gathering up that olive oil. We've now started picking up our relics as well. There's the first one. We're going to go take a look for the second one here over on that right-hand side. I don't know how I missed out 2 of the relics in the middle of the map here. I guess it shows you that my scouting wasn't the best in this game, but obviously I'm playing against the AI, so you cut me some slack, all right? So now, what we're doing is we're just looking to build up. This is more than enough forces to defend against pretty much anything that would be thrown at you at this stage of the game. Combined with the fact that you've got this early pressure on the map, I suspect that this is going to be an incredibly difficult to deal with strategy for most civilizations. When it comes to countering this strategy, I think your best bet is just going to be opening horsemen. The issue that you might have is that instead of opening into longbows, they might open into keshiks, and then keshiks do quite well against horsemen, so that could be a bit of a risk for you. Keep in mind, if you do open spears against the Byzantines, that the longbows will take you out, and they will eliminate those. On top of that, they can also go for javelin throwers, which do quite well, but typically if you're playing javelin throwers, you're going to play a little bit longer in the feudal age. In my opinion, the strength of the Byzantines now sits with this type of semi-fast castle where you get out of the gates very quickly, you look to put on a bit of pressure, and then behind that, that's where you start teching. That's where you get your wheelbarrow upgrade. That's where you look to get your upgrades in and go for that castle age, because once you've got the Varangian guards out, it's very difficult for your opponent to do any real damage. And you can see those numbers have really started building now. We've now got 15 longbows out, and we're going to start making our own longbows as well, because we've got that olive oil that started to pick up. One of the things that we'll need to do is add in those extra cisterns out towards these berry bushes. I think that's one of the most important things that you can do, because this is going to empower your army. So the faster we pick up these berries, the sooner we can reinforce that army. So that's the general idea. And we want to just try and keep it to an infantry army. I wouldn't recommend going into the cataphract, even though it's a cool unit, even though it looks cool and it's got lots of health. It's just, it's not a good unit, you know. That's at the end of the day, that's the best way to put it. It's definitely got its niche uses, but I don't think competitive 1v1 is really where it is. At least in the early castle age. Maybe towards the late game, sure, it could be a bit more useful, but it's a very expensive unit and it costs so much gold. I really just can't justify it. Maybe if they reduced the gold a little bit and increased the food a little bit, it could be okay. Or if they just gave it a charge, maybe that would be okay. But yeah, other than that. So now we're just going to start taking berry bushes. We're going to continue to mass up our units. There's a couple of ways that you can play this, but I think the best thing to do is just look to push towards your opponent. You don't really want to go for the kill just yet. You just want to try and take a fight. Typically, if you win a fight with an army like this, they're probably just going to resign, and then from there you can look to go, if they don't resign, you can look to go after villagers. Keep in mind, in your back pocket, you do have the Triumph ability, which can be used. We want to try and use this early on, because once the stacks start building, they don't stop building. So the sooner we use it, then the sooner then they'll start rebuilding for us for the next usage. And that's the way I like to think about it. So you can look to put on pressure, maybe if you're diving, because it does give you quite a decent buff to the amount of resources that you've got. When it comes to the Grand Winery, I think the Grand Winery probably not going to be as strong this patch, just mainly because of the mercenary buff. People are going to want to get out early onto the field with their mercenaries. And I think that's pretty much it. Other than that, collecting relics, you can pretty much stay on 1 TC for the entirety of the game as the Byzantines. You know, maybe if you're up against, say, the French 2 TC or Chinese 2 TC, then maybe you might need to consider it. But the fact that you've got your cisterns just pumping up that extra 26% gather rate, together with your tier 2s and your wheelbarrow, as long as you're able to take out a couple villages here and there, which you definitely will be able to do in the early game, not to mention in the mid game, I suspect the Byzantines are going to be absolutely broken in this next patch, and I suspect this strategy is going to be very difficult to deal with. But other than that, we'll leave it there, because as you can see, we're about to come towards the end of it. If you've got any feedback, let me know. If you've got any questions, give it a go. And other than that, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching.